people probably expect him to take over the majority of the carries in that offense, but I think it's going to be closer to a 50-50 split to start the season at least.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Fantasy Football Freaks. I'm Jason, he's Vaz, and today we're going to continue on with our redraft rankings. In our previous episode, we talked about our rankings on the quarterback position, and today we're going to be looking at running backs. But before we get into our actual list, we want to tell you about our best ball tournament that we are setting up for you, our fans. And Vaz, let's give them the details on what's to come.
Yeah, sure thing. So it will be on Sleeper. It's, as Jason said, a best ball format. So you can just draft your team and forget about it. You don't have to be worried about setting up your lineup every week and, hitting the waivers and making trades. Just you do the draft and you forget about it. It's going to be free to enter. So any of our listeners can join. All they have to do to be eligible is subscribe to the channel and comment down below. If you do so, you'll be eligible to join, and we'll be selecting 12 people at random in a video in early August. Now, the format is PPR SuperFlex Tight End Premium, and the winner will receive a $20 free entry to a best ball tournament we will set up next season. And one more thing I'd like to mention is you can enter this raffle multiple times. So you can comment once per video and be eligible for this raffle, 4, 5, 6 times. You don't have to, you can only do it once per video, but you could do it multiple times in every, you can be eligible in every single video. Mouthful.
That's right. So just comment on each of the videos, including this one, and you'll have a better chance of ensuring a spot in the league. All right, then, without any further ado, let's get into our content for today as we rank the running backs for this season. This has been set up by Vaz. The quarterbacks was basically my list, but Vaz has come up with a list for running backs this season. And if we're going by tiers, it is a one-man tier, alone, all by himself in number 1. It is Christian McCaffrey. I think there's no surprise on that. Is there anything that you wanted to mention on why he's alone in his tier?
No. I think we can move on as quickly as possible. Everybody has him at 1. As long as he stays healthy, he'll probably finish at 1.
Good enough. Let's go to the next tier, which includes Breece Hall, Derrick Henry, Bijan Robinson, and Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, so this is a tier that I have set up because I think all 4 of these guys will be workhorses in their backfield. So I've seen other guys join this list, guys like Jahmyr Gibbs, but I don't see Jahmyr Gibbs as, he's got David Montgomery there as well. So I don't think he's going to be, carrying the entire load. Whereas I think these 4 guys are all in good offenses, are capable of scoring, double-digit touchdowns and getting 20 touches at least per game. So I like all 4 of these guys. They're in great offenses. And I know I'm higher than most on Derrick Henry, but I know you are as well. So that's why he's here. And I think he's in for a huge season.
Yeah, I have no argument on the tier. I think I would have the exact 4 names in the tier. I wouldn't worry about the order within those 4. I think they're all close enough together. And like you mentioned, I think the big thing is, I think they all have a high floor, I think is the biggest thing, because you know that they're each going to get the touches. They don't have a David Montgomery threatening them for touches. And yeah, I totally agree. I would not have Gibbs in this tier where I have seen others have him as high, but I just think Gibbs, his floor is much lower than this group. So if you're picking high for a running back, then you want to ensure the floor. So I agree with it fully. Your next tier has 2 names in Jonathon Taylor and Kyren Williams. And I don't disagree with that either. I could see how some people might put Gibbs in there, but anything to say about these 2?
Yeah, I mean, I could even see how some people would put Jonathon Taylor a tier above because he's in a similar boat to the 4 guys we just talked about.
Yeah.
But the truth is for me that the past couple seasons have been rough for Jonathon Taylor. He hasn't really looked like the same guy he was in his rookie year, right? So that's why he's kind of slipping for me. I want to see it again. He's got a similar career trajectory as Saquon Barkley had, an enormous rookie year, vaulted up the draft rankings, but then he slipped as of late due to injury or whatnot. And then, I think also Anthony Richardson could steal some goal line work. So I'm a little bit worried about that. The backfield is his. He should get all of the touches. And then, Kyren Williams had a massive season last year as well, so that's why he's here for me as well. I think
Yeah.
he's going to get the majority of the touches and in a great offense.
I actually like Jonathan Taylor more if Anthony Richardson stays healthy throughout the season because I think the team will win more. He'll have
Yeah.
more, second half touches. And then also, as I've talked about so many times with the running quarterbacks with Hurts and Lamar with their respective running backs, both of whom you have in a tier above this, I think he's going to take attention away from the defense. So it'll open up more lanes for Taylor. So, I think with Richardson healthy, I think Taylor looks even better for this season. Your next tier has Gibbs, Pacheco, Etienne, and Jacobs. I don't think I see anything that I would disagree with once again here. Anything you want to mention with these guys?
Yeah, but actually, before we get into that, I wanted to ask you a question.
Yep.
Would you have Jonathan Taylor in the tier above with those other four guys?
It's close. It's close. The one thing that I would say, because I said previously that I would have the same four guys in the tier above, and I wouldn't care about the order. Whereas if Taylor was in the tier above, he would clearly be the fifth guy in that tier.
Okay.
So I'm okay with him being in the tier above, but if he would be, then he would be at the bottom of the tier. And then I guess what I would do is I'd put Williams in the tier below then, which I would be okay with. I'm okay with
Yeah.
having Williams the tier below, but if Taylor were in the tier above, he would clearly be the fifth guy with the other four being randomized for me personally.
Yeah, I think I'm in a similar boat.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about Gibbs, Pacheco, Etienne, and Jacobs. Anyone that you want to talk about in particular?
Yeah, sure. So, like these four guys. Okay, let me talk about them a little bit here. Jahmyr Gibbs is a lot higher in most people's lists, and I know he's very very talented. And he's in a great offense, and people probably expect him to take over the majority of the carries in that offense. But I think it's going to be closer to a 50-50 split to start the season at least. And then the three guys that I have as well in this tier, Pacheco, Etienne, and Jacobs, I think they are far more likely to handle a larger workload. And they're all three of them are in good offenses, actually like great offenses. So this is a tier for me. I had to put Gibbs in this tier because of his talent, but I could even see myself like moving Gibbs down in this tier. I think all three of the guys below him here, Pacheco, Etienne, and Jacobs, they are far more likely to handle a larger workload. And I want running backs that get a lot of touches. And I think these three players are also very good players, very, very good players in great offenses. So all four of these guys are in good offenses. And as you do as well, you like your running backs in good offenses. So they're all here. And I like this tier a lot.
Yeah, and I think the other thing with Gibbs, so let's quickly note that remember this is for redraft for dynasty. I mean, you had Gibbs, I think like top five certainly in your dynasty
Yeah.
rankings, right? But because this is redraft, that's why he is considerably lower.
Yeah, of course. I'm even like, as we're speaking of this, I'm thinking I should move Gibbs down further. Like I'm thinking he might be behind Jacobs in this tier, just because I am worried about the workload that he's going to get.
Yeah.
And as you said, I think he has a very low, not a very low floor, but he does have a low floor because I think some weeks he won't find the end zone. He might not be so effective on the ground on 14 touches. So he does have a bit of a lower floor than guys that are going to handle more workload and have more touchdown upside. Pacheco, there's no doubt in my mind that Pacheco, Etienne, and Jacobs have far more touchdown upside on a week-to-week basis than Gibbs does.
Yeah. Fair enough. Let's take a look at the next tier, which includes Aaron Jones, Rachaad White, Achane, and Walker.
Yeah, so I think like all four of these guys are very talented. The one I'm going to get a lot of pushback on is of course Aaron Jones. He's considerably further down in most people's rankings, but like I've talked about this before. I consider him the feature back in that offense. I don't think anyone's going to be taking the meaningful touches away from him. I'm sure Chandler will spell him from time to time, maybe get a series here and there. But I think like all of the most important goal line touches, red zone work, Aaron Jones will get all of them. And I think that offense is very capable of being good. So I really like him here in this tier. And then Devin Achane, who's also in this tier, a lot of people will have higher, but it's a similar situation to Gibbs. I think he's not getting as many touches as these other guys, so he's a little bit further down than most people would have him. And then like the other guys, Kenneth Walker, Rachaad White, very very talented players, so I think they belong here in this tier.
Yeah. The only thing I would change from me personally is I would have Walker at the top of the tier instead of the bottom of it. I know there's a lot of question marks because of the new head coach, McDonald, being there. Like, no one knows what he's actually going to do with the offense, but he's a Baltimore guy. And I think he's going to be a defense first, run the ball, hold the fourth quarter lead, much like Pete Carroll was. And I think with that, it'll be a heavy workload. I know, Charbonnet's there, but I think Walker still is the 1A, and I think he still is going to get a bulk of the carries. So I still like Walker, obviously very, very talented as well. Your next tier has Mixon, Kamara, Cook, Stevenson, and Montgomery.
Right. So yeah, I mean, first of all, I agree with you. Like Kenneth Walker is a very talented player, and I have no issues with going for talent, over anything else because talent usually wins out, and I think he is better than Zach Charbonnet. So I'm fine with that. I have Kenneth Walker at the bottom of that tier because Zach Charbonnet is also a good player.
Yeah.
So I think he will lose 40% of the touches in that offense. But yeah, okay, moving on to the next tier. So I've got Mixon, Kamara, Cook, Stevenson, and Montgomery. This tier is getting very difficult for me to order. I think like all of these guys are capable of having very good seasons. That's why they're here in this tier together. I have Mixon and Kamara at the top because I think they're going to lead their offenses. And, Mixon's in a very good offense, even though he's not as talented as maybe some other guys further down this list, but he's in a very good offense. And that is important in Dynasty, of course. In fantasy football, of course. And then Kamara, I still think he's got something left in the tank, especially if you're playing in a PPR format. You could probably even elevate him. I'm a little bit concerned that he could start losing work. But that being said, I think he's the best running back there on that team. So it'll be tough to take work away from him. And then, James Cook, I'm a little bit lower on than consensus. I think it's possible he's gonna lose some work as well to the rookie that they just drafted. And then I don't know if that offense is going to be quite as good as it's been in the past. And then David Montgomery is sharing touches as well, so he's at the bottom of this tier.
Let me talk a little bit first about Alvin Kamara because I don't know about you, and I'll ask you this later, but for me, I think Kamara is one of, if not the hardest running back to rank for redraft leagues. I think obviously for Dynasty, he's older, so you notch him down. But I mean, would it surprise you if he ended the season as a top 5 running back? And I'm not saying that, he should be rated higher or lower. I'm just saying when I was looking at running backs for rank, like he was a really difficult guy for me to rank because his floor can be so low. He's aging and, maybe he's losing touches, but at the same time, it wouldn't surprise me if he ended the season as a top 5 back.
Okay, that would surprise me. Top 5 would surprise me. An RB1 wouldn't surprise me. Because he, like as you said, he's very, very talented. He runs hard, but the problem is he doesn't have a lot of touchdown upside. Like he loses a lot of goal line work to Taysom Hill and then some other running backs, that are maybe more better fit for goal line work. So he loses some meaningful touches in that sense. If you play in a PPR format, I think he could be an RB1. I think if you're playing in a half PPR format, you could consider even pushing him down further. I think, the majority of his fantasy production comes in the receiving game, right? So that's where he's elite.
Yeah. No, I mean, I just found it really, like I said, I'm not saying that he should be ranked higher or should be ranked lower, but he was a guy that when I was making my rankings, I was like, man, where do I put him? Because, he could be outside the top 20, but he could be a top 5. And I'm not saying that he can overstep all the top 5 that we mentioned. I clearly like each of those guys better, but what I'm saying is at the end of the season, when you look at the rankings, because injuries do happen, and often because injuries happen, someone sneaks into the top 5 or the top 10 because of that you don't expect to be there. And, Kamara seems like a guy where if he finishes the season playing 16, 17 games, and there's, going to be at least 2 or 3 guys ahead of him in this ranking that play less than half the season, then, I can clearly see how it's possible. If I'm not saying that it will, but the
Yeah.
plausibility, I think, makes him difficult to
No,
rank.
no, I agree because like David Carr, he's such a dink and dunker, right?
Yeah.
So if you're playing in a PPR format, there are games where Alvin Kamara gets like 11, 12 receptions.
Yeah.
And even if he's not very productive with that work, 11 or 12 receptions is 11 or 12 points. So if he puts on 80 yards on top of that, he's giving you 20 fantasy points without a score. So
Yeah.
yeah, like with the type of offense they have with the Derrick Carr, that it's possible that Alvin Kamara gives you some monster weeks.
Now, I can't do it for you. The inches we need are everywhere around us. What are you gonna do? Like! Subscribe! Subscribe!
Okay, let's take a look at your next tier, which includes Swift, Mostert, and Connor.
Yeah, so okay, we're getting to the part of it where it's really difficult to rank these guys, but like Swift, he's potentially in a very good offense and he's going to be getting a lot of work there. And I think he's still a pretty talented back. If he can stay healthy, he could give you some solid fantasy production and move up these rankings. Raheem Mostert, another guy who's really difficult to rank because like he was the RB like 2 last year. It's so tough. Is he gonna fall off this year? He's gonna be a RB1 again. Like I don't know how much they're gonna use him, but if they've used him like they have in the past, maybe he's a steal at this stage, right? And then James Conner as well. Like James Conner could be much higher than this. They just drafted Trey Benson, so there is a little bit of worry there that maybe like midway through the season he loses some work. So I think if you're playing in like a standard fantasy league, not a best ball, like a standard league where like the playoffs are what matters, I think you should probably move James Conner down a little bit further down this list because I think there is a legitimate threat that he loses work near the fantasy playoff time.
Yeah. I think honestly, I could see myself putting each of these guys just into the tier above. Like, I don't feel like they're too far off each of the guys that you mentioned. I think they certainly have the upside that each of those other guys have as well. Your next tier includes Nick Chubb, Javonte Williams, Zamir White, Eckler, and Gus the Bus.
Right. So again, like piggybacking off what I just said, like Nick Chubb here at 24, I would move him up if I think like my team is going to be good enough to make the playoffs without question. Because I think come playoff time, Nick Chubb could be like the guy you want in your RB1 slot. He's just such a good running back in a great offense, So it all depends on your format and the league format you're playing. If you're playing a best ball format, I'm moving Nick Chubb down because I don't want to go into the season with injury concerns at running back, right? Every week is just as important as the next in a best ball format. So Nick Chubb would go down. But as I said, in a standard league, I'd probably move Nick Chubb ahead of James Conner and maybe even at the top of the tier, the previous tier. Javonte Williams, a guy that probably some others are down on, but I kind of have a feeling he's going to rebound this year. A season removed from the injury, I think he's a very talented player. I know the offense isn't great, but I think he could be in for a solid year. And then other guys here, Zamir White, really tough to rank. You don't know if he's going to hold that job. He looked good at the end of last season, but you know what? That's potentially a good offense, and getting him this late is probably worth a dart. Eckler, if you're playing in a PPR format, I think he's a better play than the other options in that backfield, personally. Gus Edwards, I am a bit concerned. I think he could lose work to J.K. Dobbins, who if does stay healthy, could be a better player than Gus Edwards. Yeah, so this is again a really tough tier to rank. I'm really high on Nick Chubb personally, so that's a guy that I want to come away with in drafts.
Yeah, I think the year before when they were ranking the top running backs based on I think coaches and front office personnel, Chubb was actually ranked number 1 ahead of all those big names and even McCaffrey. But that was of course pre-injury. And post-injury, that it changes. And this is not fantasy. This is just, personnel people and coaches that were talking about who they favored and Chubb being number 1. But now that you have the injury, obviously it changes a lot of things, and we'll have to see if he comes back from that or not. Last couple names that you've got in here, Brooks, the only rookie on your list with Najee Harris as well. That rounds up your top 30.
Yeah, so this is another one dependent on league format with Brooks, right? So if you're playing in a best ball, I would just take him completely off because he might miss the first 6-8 weeks. But if you're playing in a standard fantasy format, then you could probably even move him up because the playoffs are what matters. But again, you need to get there, so it's totally up to you. but I like his talent, so I'm fine drafting him here. And then Najee Harris, rounding this off, I like the player. I'm a little bit concerned that he's going to lose a lot of work to Jalen Warren in a not so good offense. But I mean, number 30 overall. I mean, I don't have a whole lot to say here.
Yeah, I think, I've said before that I'm very high on Najee Harris, but the other caveat to that is I'm also very high on Jalen Warren as well. So I agree with you that I like the player, but I am concerned about Warren's impact on the game as well, because I could see one of these guys breaking out, or at that same time, you could see both of them holding each other back. And,
Yeah.
we'll see. Because I think Pittsburgh will surprise people on how well they do, which I think will influence their running game. But it's just a matter of, how much time will either one of these guys get, and which one will actually break out if it is one or the other. Okay, there we go. That rounds out our top 30. Let us know who you think was good or bad. Who do you like in our rankings? Who do you disagree with? Comment in the section. Of course, that will qualify you on this video for being involved in our Best Ball League as well. Vaz, any last words on the list? Or let me ask your question. Like I said, I think Alvin Kamara was one of the, if hardest guy for me to rank. Was there a guy that was difficult for you to rank, or that you really took longer moving up and down the list while you were coming up with this?
Yeah, I think one guy that's particularly difficult for me is, well, there's a few, but I would say Austin Eckler. Like Austin Eckler is a guy that's very difficult for me because, he's been such a good player for so long, and then he's moved to a different location now, and then he's got Brian Robinson there as well. So you don't really know how that backfield will shake out. I don't even have Brian Robinson on my list, so clearly I value Eckler over him, and I think it's just because he's a better player. But yeah, he was a difficult one for me.
Okay, there you have it. Like I said, comment below, like the video, share this with your friends as well, and join us next time for another edition of Fantasy Football Freaks.